أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لن تنالوا البر حتى تنفقوا مما تحبون وما تنفقوا من شيء فإن الله به عليم كل الطعام كان حلا لبني إسرائيل إلا ما حرم إسرائيل على نفسه من قبل أن تنزل التوراة قل فأتوا بالتوراة فاتلوها إن كنتم صادقين فمن افترى على الله الكذب من بعد ذلك فأولئك هم الظالمون قل صدق الله فاتبعوا ملة إبراهيم حنيفا وما كان من المشركين إن أول بيت وضع للناس للذي ببكة مباركا وهدى للعالمين فيه آيات بينات مقام إبراهيم ومن دخله كان آمنا ولله على الناس حج البيت من استطاع إليه سبيلا ومن كفر فإن الله غني عن العالمين. Although we have largely covered the commentary of these verses which I have just recited before you, but there are certain points which have to be discussed which were left out in yesterday's session. So I would take up from the very beginning where I left yesterday. لن تنالوا البر حتى تنفقوا مما تحبون وما تنفقوا من شيء فإن الله به عليم. I think we have covered this verse quite extensively, but I forgot to read the various meanings of the word bir. कहाँ है वो लुग़त bir वाली? So I'll briefly only read in case I might have forgotten some connotation of the word yesterday. According to Allama Ibn Arabi, every act which leads to God is called bir, and which brings one closer to God. And also the converse of this word would be anything which leads one away from God. The love of material things, when such love prevents one from reaching God and diverts one's attention to the materialism, that would be the opposite, exactly the opposite of bir. Allama Shawkani just describes the word bir as generally what we know as righteous deeds. Ibn Masud and Ibn Abbas, Rizwanullah alayhima, would both agree that bir means the reward, heavenly reward. Lan tanalul birra, they say, which it means that your acts will not lead you to heaven. That is bir. Tafsir Qummi mein Ibn Hasan, in Tafsir Qummi Ibn Hasan speaks of bir as just generally reward, not particularly the heaven. Hazrat Masih Maud has explained this word as in the light of hatta tunfiqu mimma tuhibbun. According to Hazrat Masih Maud, the word bir is explained by the verse, that part of the verse which speaks of hatta tunfiqu mimma tuhibbun. So anything which is in accordance with this definition is bir. It's as simple as that. For instance, he says that man loves one's own life most dearly. So the bir would be that you should be ready to lay down your life for the sake of God. So everything which you love most, if you are ready to sacrifice that something, that act would become bir. So it's the most beautiful explanation of the word bir, interpretation of the word bir, which applies not to ordinary acts of goodness, but mainly to those critical areas when there are two choices before someone. The love of something prevents him, at least mentally, to offer it or to sacrifice for the sake of God. He may actually do it or not, this is irrelevant. But this mental attitude, according to Hazrat Masih Maud, our all readiness to offer that something which one loves most in the path of Allah, is called al-bir. So this is the most perfect meaning I have come across of the word bir, which is borne out according to the verse of the Holy Quran. Kullu ta'ame kana hillal li bani Israel. We discussed yesterday that according to the Holy Quran, all food of whatever nature was lawful to the children of Israel, that is Hazrat Yaqub's children. And later on, when Torah was revealed, some foods were forbidden and some were not. But prior to this, there is no authority related to which emanates from God's orders, which prevented anything to the people of Israel from eating anything. Now, this verse has been made a bone of contention by the Orientalists, and particularly has very bitterly attacked this. We mentioned milk of camel and flesh of camel among possible things which might have been those particular objects of food which Hazrat Yaqub made unlawful, or which he forbade himself to eat. But these are just gestures. As far as the Holy Quran is concerned, the Holy Quran does not mention anything in particular. It's a general statement which says that whatever is forbidden in Torah, prior to this, there is no divine authority with you which can prove that that and that and that also was forbidden. So prior to Torah, everything was permissible. This is the only logical conclusion. So because most people by reading the commentary of Muslim scholars and being aware of their suggestions, thought that perhaps it was the milk or flesh of camel, they have made this as a point of objection, raising objection against Islam and the Holy Quran, Very being the foremost among them. He says that perhaps the references to that and that verse of the Bible where the only thing mentioned is the muscle of the thigh and not the milk and the camel. So, according to him, Nauz Billah, Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was willfully misleading people, and according to him, that is why when once Hazrat Umar Razillah Ta'ala Anhu brought a copy of the Bible and mentioned it to, or what is called Pentateuch? The Pentateuch or Pentateuch or something. Not Pentateuch, but the Torah. Pentateuch is the word. I don't exactly remember the pronunciation, but it will come up somewhere. So they're referring to Torah. According to Veri, it is reported that Hazrat Umar once brought a copy of Torah to Hazrat and started reading it. And Hazrat Sallallahu became very angry and flushed in the face. Hazrat Abu Bakr was watching his face, and he pointed out to Umar, Umar, stop it. Don't you observe the signs of displeasure on the face of Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? So why do you continue reading? And thereby he left it and abandoned his attempt. So he very develops this theme that this shows that Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was afraid that when he reads the Bible, his own concoction, that is to say, the fabrications against the Bible would be detected, and that is why he discouraged his companions to read Bible. Now, it's exactly the opposite. Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam had no knowledge, no personal knowledge of the Bible. He had no access to the Bible. He could not read or write. Now, if a close companion like Umar had got access and he was known to be reading Bible to him, these enemies of Islam would raise hue and cry against this and said, now he is caught. It was Umar who used to teach Bible to him, and all that he reported from Bible was from people like Umar and some others maybe. So that act of Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was an act of extreme honesty and caution, not the other way around. Secondly, agreeing with the suggestions of the Muslim scholars, he speaks of the milk of camel and meat of camel as if they are mentioned in the Holy Quran. This is his dishonesty. They are not at all mentioned in the Holy Quran. What he said is a simple fact, that whatever is forbidden in Torah, prior to this, there is no sign of any divine prohibition regarding any other thing, or even that thing which is mentioned in Torah. So the first prohibition we come across is in Torah. And he suggests, that because he could not prove his point, that it was milk and camel, so he was afraid that his fabrication would be detected. While he forgets the fact that it is not just a historical question which is being discussed here. The challenge of the Quran is an open, living challenge for all times to come. At least nobody prohibited Veri from reading the Bible. If he were an honest man, he should have found out that place where it was mentioned that prior to the revelation of Torah, there were other things forbidden to the people of Israel. There is no such mention at all anywhere. So even today, no man on earth can take up this challenge of the Holy Quran and prove otherwise. So when you speak to the Christians or others regarding this, do not unnecessarily emphasize the flesh of camel or milk of camel, because that is not what is mentioned. The traditions tell us that because the Jews used to mock at the Muslims and tease them by saying, look here, you pretend to be the followers of Abraham. So if you are truly followers of Abraham, like us, stop eating the milk of camel and flesh of camel. As if that was also the practice of Abraham. So this was a very false position. No one on earth, even today, can prove that Hazrat Ibrahim ﷺ at any time in his life, either through divine order or by his own personal inclinations, forbade himself the use of any other flesh like flesh of camel or anything. This is not simply not mentioned. So the Holy Quran's challenge stands right, but very, as I have told you, is reminds me of a word in our language, Punjabi particularly. I think in Urdu also it is used. The word very. Very means a sworn blind enemy who would hate anything about anybody without rhyme or reason, but because he is a committed enemy. So this very is very in that sense. He is a committed enemy of Islam. In that sense, he is true to himself, but false to Islam. Whenever you read very, your blood begins to boil at his crookedness, not at his disagreement. Because no sane man can feel anger at a disagreement genuinely expressed. Everybody has a right to disagree and to argue. But when you see the signs of crookedness and blindness and hatred in your disagreement, in somebody's disagreement with you, then it is that attitude which hurts you, not the disagreement itself. Now again, they believe in all those myths and without winking an eye, but when it comes to the signs mentioned by the various Muslim scholars regarding Maqam Ibrahim, etc., they take a very strongly mocking, deriding position against Islam. He himself, he reports that what happened to Hazrat Yaqub, that is Israel, was that he fought a battle with an angel all night. And it was a physical wrestling. You know, the picture he paints, and which is of course painted in the Bible, is that of a physically wrestling people. That means that angel was also made of flesh and bones like human beings. So the angel pressed his thumb against one of the nerve centers in the thigh, so that this created the sciatica pain. And he tells on the story, that goes on to build the story, as related of course in the Bible, that this was done with a very special purpose. The purpose was that Hazrat Yaqub had sworn that if he were given 12 children by God, 12 sons, and if he could visit Palestine in a state of health after this blessing of God, he would sacrifice, that is to say physically sacrifice, one of his sons on the altar somewhere in Palestine. So he had decided to fulfill that, but God did not want him to do it. So God sent an angel, this was God's way, who fought with him. And after leaving the thumb impression on his thigh, he just turned to him and said, "Look here, I could have defeated you, all right, but that was not my purpose. The purpose was simply to leave you ill, so that you do not have to sacrifice your son, literally as you had promised." But according to the Bible, he still went and decided to sacrifice the son. Later on, God prevented him strongly not to do it. So why could not God do it earlier, when he knew that he would not listen to the impression created on him by the angel, and he would suffer so much from sciatica unnecessarily, without purpose? He should have, in the first place, told him, "Stop it. Don't have to. You don't have to offer any sacrifice." And ironically, the same angel was sent again to tell him, "Look here, I have already punished you enough. Why don't you forget about it and stop from this
meaningless sacrifice. But anyway, these are the people who are blinded in one eye, as the Holy Prophet has described them so beautifully. One of their eyes, which is opening towards Islam and towards truth, is completely blind. They can't see anything. The other eye may be very brilliant and may be able to penetrate deep the secret of nature, but it has, as far as Islam is concerned, unfortunately, they always turn the blind eye to the truth of Islam. So, in the light of this, فَمَنِ افْتَرَى عَلَى اللَّهِ الْكَذِبَ مِنْ بَعْدِ ذَلِكَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ is a very clear statement which can never be refuted by any opponent of Islam. Islam has laid down the bare facts that you simply cannot prove any injunction regarding the prohibitions of edible things prior to Torah. So how can you claim that this and that was forbidden and you should not eat? So if you invent anything, if you concoct anything after that, that will be a willful concoction against God, and that would be a crime punishable by God. Now on the verse قُلْ صَدَقَ اللَّهُ فَاتَّبِعُوا مِلَّةَ إِبْرَاهِيمَ حَنِيفًا وَمَا كَانَ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ, which means, say, Allah has declared the truth, follow therefore the religion of Abraham, who was ever inclined to Allah, and he was not of those who associate gods with him, partners with him. On this very, as well as many others like him, it is, I think, very, with W-H-E-R-R-Y, very, along with many other Orientalists, have taken the view that Millat Ibrahim Hanifa was something which existed before Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So he appears to make a claim that as if he is the reviver of Ibrahimi traditions, which is wrong. He borrowed it and learned these things from people who existed before him, and there was a regular sect in Arabia which called itself Hanafites, referring to the same Abraham. Now again, this is something which is attributed to Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and the Holy Quran completely falsely. He never acquired a position that he has rediscovered the faith of Abraham while it had become distinct. Repeatedly, the Holy Quran refers to the traditions of Abraham as widely known traditions. And repeatedly, the Holy Quran points out to the Jews that you already know. These were the traditions of Abraham. These are the living traditions of Abraham. So let's come to this agreement, to the joining point that we follow these traditions and no more. So the debate would end there, because Abraham is one religious personality who is widely respected by the three major religions of the world: Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. So this is the argument, and never even remotely the Holy Quran mentions that it was Hazrat Rasul Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam himself who had discovered something which was previously lay buried under the dust of thousands of years. So he rediscovered it. It is not so. And again, the Holy Quran has repeatedly mentioned that no religion is new. Now, these are very superficial people. These critics of Islam in the West have no depth of vision. Or if they have, as I told you, they turn the blind eye to it. No sane man who has read the Holy Quran can ever afford to forget that it is the Holy Quran for the first time who has pointedly and repeatedly taken this position that no religion basically is different from any other religion, because they all emanate from God. And as such, it has to be like this and it cannot be otherwise. So Islam is the one religion which stands out among other religions by making this repeated claim that truth is not a monopoly of any one particular religion or any one area of the world. Truth was revealed by God at all ages to all mankind in different forms, but the fundamentals of the truth remain the same. This has been repeated at so many places, but there is one small chapter devoted to this subject. Surah Bayyana speaks of this, and it speaks of truth as Deenul Qayyimah, which mentioning other prophets, it says, وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ حُنَفَاءَ وَيُقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَيُؤْتُوا الزَّكَاةَ وَذَلِكَ دِينُ الْقَيِّمَةِ. No prophet before was ever revealed anything but these fundamental teachings, that they should devote themselves entirely and sincerely to God and worship Him, and to serve in the cause of Allah and in the cause of the poor. This is the basic teaching of every religion. So Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam never claimed to have invented anything. First of all, to repeatedly refer to him as somebody who claims to have invented something, that also is false. He speaks of a revelation from God. So if they want to prove anything, they should say that the God of Muhammad seems to have learnt from Torah and from other things. That position would become immediately absurd, because he is the same God who revealed Torah and other religious books. فيه آيات بينات مقام إبراهيم. I was so happy this morning when somebody pointed out to me that Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ had taken exactly the same position regarding Maqam Ibrahim as I took yesterday. And he has presented me with an excerpt from Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ's book, Brahim Ahmadiyya, volume 4, page 510. Hashia, the Hashia, that is in the border, he has written something, and that reminded him of something else, so another border was created, like the old custom was. In that border, he writes, इस जगह मुकाम इब्राहीम से अखलाक मर्दिया व मुआमला बिल्लाह मुराद है, यानी महब्बत इलाहिया और तफवीज़ और रज़ा और वफ़ा, यही हकीकी मुकाम इब्राहीम का है जो उम्मत मोहम्मदिया को बतौर तबईयत व वरासत अता होता है, और जो शख्स क़ल्ब इब्राहीम पर मखलूक है उसकी इत्बा भी उसी में है, इसी में है. This means, generally speaking, that the place of Ibrahim, the station, maqam, which is mentioned in the Holy Quran, is that conduct of Ibrahim and his pious acts which received God's favor. Mardiya means that conduct and those pious acts which received the favor of Allah, they are the Maqam Ibrahim, which means love of God and one's total submission to the will of God, and to be faithful to God in everything. This is the real meaning of Maqam Ibrahim, which has been uh, further bequeathed to the people of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam by way of heritage. And whoever has a heart which has been created after the fashion of Abraham, it is for him to follow Abraham and try to acquire this special station of Abraham. So, fihi ayatum bayyanatum maqam Ibrahim means that there are so many signs related to this place. Maqam is not the place, but signs are related to the place where Abraham stood. And standing of Abraham is not literal, but metaphorical in the spiritual sense. So it would mean that this is a place, the place where people go for Hajj, where Abraham stood once with his station with his God. And whatever you find of blessing in this Hajj, this is in fact a reminder of what Abraham was, and a reminder of Abraham's behavior and attitude towards God and his behavior and attitude to the people. So when you come to Hajj with open eyes in search of that maqam, that conduct of Abraham, which was so beautiful and so wonderful, that this place has been chosen as a symbol of that Abrahami traditions to live forever and to guide mankind forever. وَمَنْ دَخَلَهُ كَانَ آمِنًا. Whoever enters this becomes safe. Now this also has been translated literally. Of course it is literal as well. I do not deny, no one can deny this, that there is a sense of personal security related to the holy places of Kaaba and the people places around it. The whole city in the Holy Quran has been mentioned as the Amin city. وَالتِّينَ وَالزَّيْتُونَ وَطُورِ سِينِينَ وَهَذَا الْبَلَدِ الْأَمِينَ. So the entire city of Mecca is mentioned as Amin. So the literal meaning of Amin is not wrong, but sometimes it is carried too far in its literal application, and people try to, earlier scholars particularly, have tried to limit the meaning of Amin to the concept of a sanctuary. It is Amin physically because the Holy Quran has repeatedly prohibited people from act of vandalism, violence, even harsh use of harsh language, abuse of others, and so on and so forth. And the property and the honor and the blood of everyone is guaranteed, protected, and vouchsafed in the area which is called the Amin area. But some scholars went a step further and tried to limit the meaning of this word Amin to the concept of sanctuary. So most scholars in the commentaries you find are involved in a debate about what sort of sanctuary the Kaaba provides for people. Now, as far as the general area is concerned, they all agree that there the meaning of Amin is different, it's not a sanctuary. But in case of a haram, that really is a sanctuary. But what sort of sanctuary? Now, they first present it in the form well known in the world, ordinarily understood by the people of the world, and then try to take back every security offered by various devices. Because basically they don't seem to agree with the concept of sanctuary at all, in principle. For instance, there are two debates have been raging around this connotation of the word ameen. Number one, if someone commits a sin within haram and within Baitul Haram, would he be forgiven? Now, all scholars are agreed, no. There is no dissension about it. If someone commits a sin within the four walls of Baitul Haram, he would be punished as severely as if he had committed the sin anywhere else. No lenience would be shown to him. But if somebody has committed a sin outside, then most scholars are agreed that he would not be punished while he is in the Baitul Haram. But not for all sins. They say only if he has committed murder, then he will not be punished. But if he has committed other sins, then he could be dragged out, and if not punished there, punished outside. So the concept of sanctuary grows to be smaller and smaller. And then about the murderer, they say, of course he will not be killed there nor dragged out because he has sought the sanctuary, but he will be totally boycotted. He would not be provided with any water or food or anything for survival. People will not speak to him, and he will remain confined in a state where ultimately he will be compelled to walk out or die in hunger and thirst. So the problem is solved. The sanctuary is created and sanctuary is dissolved. Now this is carrying things too far. The word ameen here in fact means a man ameen in the sense that Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam was ameen. A place where the amana of God's sharia is not violated, where people act piously, and that is Maqam Ibrahim. So the Maqam Ibrahim has been explained here in this verse, Man dakhalahu kana amina. In fact, when you enter Maqam Ibrahim, you become amin and ameen and everything related to this word. People are safe from you. And you are safe from people because nobody has any justification, if you become Ibrahim-like, to hurt you in any way. So, Maqam Ibrahim has been explained. It's not the second sign. It is the same Ibrahimi conduct which is being described further by speaking of man dakhalahu kana amina. وَلِلَّهِ عَلَى النَّاسِ حِجُّ الْبَيْتِ مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ إِلَيْهِ سَبِيلًا. This word مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ إِلَيْهِ سَبِيلًا has also been made a bone of contention and controversy. Some people believe that مَنِ اسْتَطَاعَ إِلَيْهِ سَبِيلًا only means if you have wealth enough and strength enough, then you can go to perform Hajj and it becomes incumbent upon you. Some people say that this, according to some traditions of Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when this question was raised before him, in answer to this he said, if somebody has zadera, which is to say has enough provision for passage to Mecca, and also a mode of travel, then he can go. So some scholars say that money is quite enough and mode of travel is not necessary. only enough provision, but health is necessary, because health would replace the need of a beast of burden, and one can, if one can walk, why should he not? But some others still further enlarge the application of word istita and say istita also means guarantee for security, personal security, and guarantee for the peace of the passage. Now, because in the traditions quoted that is not mentioned, so some people insist that this should not be included, while actually the practice of Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself has proved beyond a shadow of doubt that the safety of passage is a prerequisite for making the Hajj obligatory on people. Otherwise, you cannot explain his behavior on Hudaybiyah. In Hudaybiyah, at the field of Hudaybiyah, all the companions of Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam were agreed that as far as the conditions are required, they are fulfilled. Nobody has a right to stop them. So whether the sword is used to stop the passage of these pilgrims, that is irrelevant. We must go and try, and bloodshed is not our responsibility, it would be the responsibility of the enemy. That was their position. Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam rejected this position and said no, because there is no safety, because bloodshed would be involved, so we are absolved of this injunction of going to pilgrimage to Kaaba. Now this in fact is nothing new. In this very verse, this has been included because it speaks of man dakhala hu kana amina. After that, walillahi ala nasi hijjul bayti. So aman or personal security has already been mentioned. How can one reach Khana Kaaba and on the way he's murdered, slaughtered or maimed, and about him you can say dakhalahu kana amina? So the word amana in fact is extended backwards. Even before the entering of haram, there has to be some security. Otherwise this description is non-applicable. Man dakhalahu kana amina. Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam has also taken this position. And he says that for the prerequisites of Hajj, the personal security is essential. If there are robbers on the way, if there is no security within Kaaba itself, then according to the Holy Quran, you are absolved of your responsibility as long as security is not provided to you. قُلْ يَا أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ لِمَ تَكْفُرُونَ بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ شَهِيدٌ عَلَى مَا تَعْمَلُونَ. Address the people of the book by saying, O people of the book, لِمَ تَكْفُرُونَ بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ, why do you reject the signs of God? وَاللَّهُ شَهِيدٌ عَلَى مَا تَعْمَلُونَ, while God knows full well what you do. Here again, those of the committed enemies of Islam, I have mentioned, they mock at this verse by starting quoting those signs which have been narrated by the commentators, medieval commentators mainly. And because those signs, according to them, are absurd, so they say these are the signs which the Holy Quran wants the Jews and the people of the book to believe. How can one believe in such absurdities? They take the position. that Abraham stood on a large and square stone, and that stone was turned into soft mud, so his feet sank, and then everything, all that I told you yesterday. They say, how can one believe in this nonsense? And the Holy Quran says these are the signs. And some other signs related to Kaaba, which they say they're all very questionable. Abraha is mentioned also by them. So the fact is, the Muslim scholars have themselves led them into a position which is indefensible by unnecessarily and unwisely attributing to the Quran things which the Holy Quran never said. Signs of God which are mentioned in relation to this challenge to the Jews have to be those which are visible to them, which are understandable by them, not otherwise. Otherwise this challenge would be meaningless. So the Holy Quran has never taken a position which cannot be defended. So here, lima takfuruna bi ayatillahi means those signs which were promised to Abraham, which the Jews saw fulfilled in the form of rehabilitated pilgrimage to Makkah in the style of Abraham. God gave Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam that opportunity. While he was so defenseless physically in the beginning and so helpless that all odds were against him and his personal security and the security of his message, there is no reason why he or his message should survive. There is no reason why, looking at the bare facts of history, to believe why he should be able to rehabilitate the lost traditions of Abraham, which were not lost in the sense of their knowledge, but they were certainly lost in the sense of their practices. So he, when he calls to the Sunnah or traditions of Abraham, is also provided an opportunity by God to demonstrate to the world what those traditions were. That holy atmosphere is recreated around Kaaba. These were the signs which should have been visible to the Jews and the people of the book. So a false claimant from himself could not have achieved this impossibility by himself alone. So it has to be God who gave him this opportunity to demonstrate to the world that he was a true representative and the spiritual inheritor of Abraham alayhi salatu wasalam. Wallahu shahidun ala ma ta'malun further supports this interpretation by creating a contrast, by pointing out to them, look here, don't you see how you act in this world? If you try to hide them from the people, don't you realize that God knows how you act in your private lives? So remember this, that your own actions in this world, your own conduct and behavior in this world stands against you as a conduct which has nothing to do, to prove that this conduct has nothing to do with the traditions of Abraham. He was a truthful, pious man who was always rightly inclined. If he fell in the right direction, as I've explained earlier. You are exactly the opposite. How could you be the torchbearer of the light of Abraham? One of the Muslim scholars has spoken on this verse in a different angle as well. He says, although the Jews are addressed mainly, or people of book generally, let's say, including the Christian scholars who had become distorted in those days, but the Holy Quran refers also to those Muslim scholars which were destined to copy their habits. So he speaks of that tradition of Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which tells us that याति ज़मान अल-इस्लाम है हाँ याति अल-नास ज़मानुन ला यबक़ा मिनल इस्लाम इल्ला इस्मुहु वला यबक़ा मिनल कुरान इल्ला रस्मुहु मसाजिदुहुम आमिरतुम वहिया खराबुम मिनल हुदा उलमाउहुम शर्रु मन तहत आदिमिस समा. Will you find out which commentator has written it, so I should mention his name and the name of the book as well. He says that according to the Holy Quran, Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Muslims, there would, unfortunately, a time was to come when the Muslim ulama were to act exactly in the style as the Jewish ulama had acted earlier. So this verse does not only address them, but also addresses these internal Jewish scholars who within the pale of Islam are behaving like the Jews, and their purported allegiance to truth is falsified by their bad acts and unrighteous behavior. So he says it is Tafsir Ruhul Bayan, Allama Ismail Haqqi has written this tafsir, and it is quite one of the famous tafasir of the Holy Quran. He says, ज़ाहिरन तो यहाँ खिताब यहूद से है, लेकिन बातिन में उलमाए सू से खिताब है कि दीन को दुनिया के एवज़ बेच देते हैं. Apparently though, the address is to the Jews, but in real sense, in truth, the address is to those bad ulama, vile or vicious ulama, who sell their faith for the sake of worldly gains, and who know that their lifestyle, daily acts are not in accordance with the teachings of the Holy Quran or in accordance with the dictates of taqwa and piety. He says, so we are reminded of a tradition of the holy founder of Islam, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, yati al-nas zamanun la yabqa min al-islam illa ismuhu wa la min al-Quran illa. Here he does not use the known version of the hadith, that is to say, which is familiar to us. There is slight difference in the words. So instead of min al-Islam illa ismuhu, he says illa ismun. Instead of saying min al-Quran illa rasmuhu, he mentions the word rasm only, illa rasmun. Qulubuhum kharabatun min al-huda wa masajiduhum amiratun. While the version we know is masajiduhum amiratun wa hiya kharabun min al-huda. But he says, he uses some other version. I don't know this authority, but we know the reference of the other book, which is, you remember that? From Hyderabad, Deccan, we had the original, copy. Previously, we didn't have the original reference because some ulama started challenging the truth of this tradition, the authenticity of this tradition. So I remember we wrote to India because I had heard that in Hyderabad, Osmania University, this original work on traditions was available. So some scholars went there and photocopied from there. So that I remember the version there was different from this version which has been quoted by the author of Tafsir Ruhul Bayan, but the essence is the same. Masajiduhum amiratum, Man tazilus sama. Innahum sharrum. Man tazilus sama yawma yazin. नहीं ये ताता नहीं ना दिया हुआ यहाँ तज़िलुस समा यौमइज़िन उलमाहुम ऐसे. So it means the same things, although the words used are slightly different from the words known to us. قُلْ يَا أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ لِمَ تَصُدُّونَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ مَنْ آمَنَ تَبْغُونَهَا عِوَجًا وَأَنْتُمْ شُهَدَاءُ وَمَا اللَّهُ بِغَافِلٍ عَمَّا تَعْمَلُونَ. Say, O people of the book, why hinder ye the believers from the path of Allah, seeking to make it crooked, while you are witnesses thereof, and Allah is not unmindful of what you do. قُلْ يَا أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ لِمَ تَصُدُّونَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ مَنْ آمَنَ. There was a constant attempt by the people of the book at the time of Ahmad in his life in Medina to mislead Muslims by telling them various stories from Apocrypha which were either not quoted in the Bible, or if they were taken from the Bible, they were given a different wrong twist. And they were constantly attempting to confuse the issues by presenting the case against Islam in the manner that Ahmad has spoken of a revelation regarding certain events, while in reality, according to the Bible, those events took place differently. So that shows that whoever has told Ahmad is not fully aware of the contents of the Bible. Things like this were spread by way of insinuations, and they attempted constantly to change or damage the faith of the Muslims. Now, this is a practice which still continues, and you should be fully warned against it. All the Western scholars have taken this attitude that the Holy Quran refers to some statements of the Bible which cannot be supported by the biblical version. And according to Very, he has mentioned this particularly. He says, whenever the Jews protested, they said, look here, this is not what we find in the Bible. The Holy Prophet would say, and his companions, that you have changed the version. So, it is the interpolated version which you are speaking of, or he has not mentioned, Very has said that they would say your translation is not correct. So he goes on building this by this theme by saying that, all right, if the translation was not correct, why did Muhammad prevent his companions from reading the book and finding the right translation? So instead of adopting this sensible attitude of encouraging his people to have access to the Bible and read it in the right translation, they were prevented totally from reading Bible at all. While I have already mentioned the incident which has been quoted by him, it does not mean that at all. But again, he willfully speaks only of translation, while the Holy Quran has not mentioned translation anywhere. What the Holy Quran has said is that you have interpolated the Bible. You hide, and also the Holy Quran speaks of putting your hands on certain things and showing others. So that does not mean a change of the original version through translation. It means that already there is enough evidence in the Bible against you. But you make use of the ignorance of the Arabs of Bible, or because they were generally illiterate people. And that is how you try to deceive people, by putting your hand on certain things. And the Holy Quran speaks of this not only in relation to their opposition to Islam, but also this was their habit, according to the Holy Quran, regarding their own ignorant people. It had not just developed in relation to Islam. It was a long, traditionally, the long traditional style and attitude of the Jewish scholars, that whenever they said something on their own, but made it appear to be from God, and if that something was challenged, they would always show only a part of the Bible to the people and cover the other part. That doesn't mean literally they would put their hand on it, but it means that they would hide it from others. Now this we have witnessed today in this age exactly as the behavior of anti-Ahmadiyya scholars. When they show to the Muslims, generally speaking, the other Muslims, and sometimes Ahmadis as well, some writings of Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ, they put their hands on certain writings and highlight certain others. And they never speak of those writings which explain the true meaning of those writings which are taken out of their context and used to create a very wrong and different impression. This is exactly the style of the Jewish people which has been condemned by the Holy Quran, not the translation part. And we also take the issue with them, not on the issue of translation. We allege and we prove that our allegation is correct, that this is what unfortunately you are doing to Hazrat Masih Maud ﷺ. Also, they do the same thing to Hadith. You would never hear from them such traditions as I have spoken of, which clearly describe the state of Muslim ulama's crookedness. So they speak of only those traditions which help them. When they discuss Khatamun Nabiyyin, they never speak of those traditions which throw a different light to the same subject elsewhere. For instance, Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam once said that in explanation of his position as Khatamun Nabiyyin, he said, which this means there would be no prophet between me and the promised Messiah. Very clearly, he is speaking of the Messiah to come. And he says there would be no prophet between me and him. Now, when you say that, obviously it means that he would be a prophet. Otherwise, he should have said, not even he would be a prophet. Now, this hadith you will never hear from the pulpit of non-Ahmadi scholars, non-Ahmadi mosques. And there are others as well who further explain the meaning of Khatam al-Nabiyyin in the context of the prophecies of Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam regarding a reformer of the latter days. So this is the attitude which is condemned by the Holy Quran, and the unfortunate enemies of truth intentionally twist the statements of the Holy Quran to suit their meaning, while the Holy Quran is saying obviously something quite different. قُلْ يَا أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ لِمَ تَصُدُّونَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ مَنْ آمَنَ. So man amana is those who have believed, that is the followers of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And here also, in this age, we find that hundreds of thousands of small booklets are distributed to Ahmadis and dropped in their homes. Only carrying, not carrying the arguments based on the Holy Quran or tradition, only carrying some excerpts from Hazrat Masih Maud's books, quoted totally out of context and creating a very wrong impression. So they are being translated into Arabic and so many other languages. Fortunately, the Ahmadis of Pakistan and India, because they know Urdu well, and most of them are already familiar with Hazrat Masih Maud's works and his teachings, they cannot be misled at all. Hardly there would be a few, a maximum a dozen, from among the illiterate people of Pakistan who fell prey to this attempt. Otherwise, all Ahmadis stood firmly against this attitude, and they know this is all false. But the Arabs do not know. Many other people living in different countries do not know. And their Muslim, most of the Muslims, even if they are educated, because they are not aware of Hazrat Masih's writings, they do not know. So they go on misleading people. Man amana here would be mainly, of course, applicable to those who have believed. But the same attempt prevents people from accepting. So this verse builds this theme further. Now, before this, the verse speaks of lema tasudduna an sabilillah. So the application of this attitude of the Jews is not limited only to those who have believed, but those who might have believed. Tasudduna an sabilillah means you are preventing people from joining the path of God, of traversing the path of Allah. Man amana here would be applicable in this sense to those who might have believed. So the man amana should be understood in the light of this verse as those who have believed and those who might have believed, but you prevent them from believing because of your twisted attitude. Tabghunaha ewaja, you want to see the path of God as distorted and twisted. Now here the word ewaja is exactly the opposite of the word hanifa, although basically they seem to have the same connotation of twist. So this explains both the words in the juxtaposition. Hanifa is a twist which is always on the right side. Iwaj is a twist which is always on the wrong side. So a man who has iwaj is bent upon reading wrong things in just simple ordinary statements. Hazrat Khalifa al-Masih Awwal Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu has spoken on this and mentions that during his experience of a lifetime, he has found some people who would always give a different twist to the simple ordinary statements, who would always be after finding faults with others. So tabghunaha iwaja describes the state of such people. And the Holy Quran condemns this attitude. Instead of trying to find out goodness and mainly to have concern with discovering the good points of people or good points in a teaching, if you are always bent on discovering only the bad things, then your attitude becomes twisted. Then everything which is straight normally would appear to be twisted to you. So tabghunaha iwaja has this meaning also. It means that despite the fact that the Holy Quran has revealed a teaching which is sirat-e mustaqim. Mustaqim is against iwaj. And this juxtaposition of the two words can be proved from other verses of the Holy Quran, where they are put opposite to each other as two poles. Like in Surah Kahf, Alhamdulillah allazi anzala ala abdihi al-kitaba wa lam yaj'al lahu iwaja qayyiman liyunzira basan shadidan. Qayyim is the word for mustaqim here, used here, and which is straight, and not only straight but which keeps others straight. So the Holy Quran says this holy prophet of God and this book which is being revealed to him, they are both qayyim. They are straight, not only mustaqim but qayyim, which means which makes other mustaqim. La iwaja lahu. Again the same surah speaks of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. La iwaja lahu. There is no twist in him. So tabghunaha iwaja means you have become extremely jealous of a teaching, of a religion which is so straightforward and honest, and there is no twisting in its education. No twist in its education and teachings. And you want it to be turned differently. So you go on trying to insinuate things and sow the ideas into the minds of the believers, so that ultimately their faith ends up as a twisted faith. Now this verse of the Holy Quran is very important in connection with the history of wrong ideas finding roots in Islam. There are so many traditions reported from Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam about which many scholars have proved that they were intentionally introduced by the Jews, and they did not originally belong to genuine works of hadith, but constantly an attempt was made by the Jews and some other enemies of Islam to introduce false ideas into Islam. And they always did it by attributing those things to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because the Holy Quran was unchangeable. It defied all attempts to change even a jot of the Holy Quran itself. So the only path left to them open was to reach out on Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam and attribute things to him. Now this verse should have warned Muslims to accept these things with a pinch of salt, not to readily fall prey to these attempts. Because the Holy Quran says, we warn you, this is what they are going to do to your faith. They see it as a straight faith. They would not rest until they have made it appear twisted and false. So all these attempts of the Jewish scholars are not just the imagination of the Muslims. According to the Holy Quran, this is exactly what they intended to do to Islam, and they started doing right from the time of Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Wa antum shuhada means that those people who make this attempt do it consciously. Not that there is no mistaking about it. Now this exactly is the position of the enemies of Ahmadiyyat, unfortunately for them. When they attribute certain things to Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam, for instance, that he claimed to be God, or he claimed to be enjoying the same status or even higher status than Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or that he added to the teachings of the Holy Quran or subtracted from the teachings of the Holy Quran. These are the claims which are openly now being made by the enemies of Ahmadiyyat, and I can challenge them, and any Ahmadi can challenge them. They know it, this is false. Within their hearts, in their private talks, they always admit. And in fact, there is no difference between Ahmadiyyat and others, except their claim that Hazrat Masih Maud is a sort of prophet. That is the only real difference. Otherwise, this is the same thing. Only yesterday, somebody, Shakir Sahib, reported to me a talk between some visitors from Pakistan and an Ahmadi who was working in a some food store. He asked them about Ahmadis and about the allegations that they had invented a new faith and this and that. So he said, if this is true, then what you did to them is well justified. So in response, they said, it's all false. They said, everybody knows this is false. This is cruelty to Ahmadis. Qadianis, the words they used was Qadianis. They said, this is an allegation which has no foundation. They are exactly Muslims in all their practices. In fact, they are better Muslims. They practice the Holy Quran with all sincerity, follow each letter, each dot of the Holy Quran and the traditions, but they have, according to them, they have concocted a new prophet. So that is all the objection we have. The rest you hear is just false and meaningless. So this is the common knowledge, in fact. These ulama are fully aware that these are false allegations. Once I remember one of the scholars who was supposed to be one of the chief opponents of Ahmadiyyat, I think it was Atawla Shah Bukhari, but somebody of his status, whom once Ahmadis met after his fiery speech against Ahmadis and asked him about a few things. He said, no, they are good people, they are all right. Nothing wrong with them. But after all, we have to eat. We have to have some means of livelihood, so this is our means of livelihood. Once a scholar boycotted Ahmadis, so advocated boycott of Ahmadis so vehemently that he declared that whoever does it, his wife stands divorced and he would go straight to hell and this and that. And within an hour or so, he was caught by some of the audience sitting happily with some Ahmadis and enjoying a cup of tea and some sweets with them. So they were amazed to see him in this, and they said, what's this? He said, that was a public address and this is the normal way of life. Why should you wonder at it? So when the Holy Quran says, وَأَنْتُمْ شُهَدَاء, this is not just a high-flown claim. This is not just an allegation. This is borne out by the realities. It was as good at the time when this verse was revealed as it is today. Most of those who allege against Muhammad, write books against him and against Islam, are fully aware of the realities. They pick out only those things which help them try to create the image of Islam as a twisted faith. Otherwise, these scholars must have read other traditions which clarify the position of those traditions which they pick out to attack Islam. وَمَا اللَّهُ بِغَافِلٍ عَمَّا تَعْمَلُونَ. God is not unaware. God would not neglect what you are doing. You may hide your attitude from the people, your falsehood from the people, but God knows that you know it. So you will be answerable. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِن تُطِيعُوا فَرِيقًا مِّنَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ يَرُدُّوكُمْ بَعْدَ إِيمَانِكُمْ كَافِرِينَ. O who believe, if you follow a group of the people who were given the book before you, يَرُدُّوكُمْ بَعْدَ إِيمَانِكُمْ كَافِرِينَ, they would return you to the state of rejection or denial after you had become believers. Now this again, the twisted mind of Wary has interpreted completely out of context and in a very in a way as finds no justification. he says, you see, now we know why he was stopping people from reading the Bible. By the word atiyu, he understands reading. So he said, if you read the Bible, you will know the facts. This is the meaning, in fact. And when you realize that the Holy Quran is false and the Bible is right, and Muhammad Rasulullah Sallam was attributing things to Bible which were not there, then you would revert back to the state of your denial. That is how the Holy Quran prevented people from learning about the truth. It is not at all that. It is something completely different. The word tutiyu only means follow. And because it has been described in the earlier verse, and this is the connection between this and that they make false claims of belonging to Abraham and his traditions, while their practices give lie to their claim. And or in their practices, they are not what they appear and they are not what they claim to be. As such, if you followed them, then you will be like them. You will become hypocrites. And you will revert to the old state of denial of truth. Now, this is a simple meaning which is well connected and borne out by the context of this verse, which again is given a twist because such people belong to those about whom the Holy Quran says, "Tabghunaha ewaja." It is in their nature to see falsehood where it doesn't exist, and to see things with their colored eye views, with colored glasses on their eyes, and attribute false meanings to the Holy Quran and statements. وَكَيْفَ تَكْفُرُونَ وَأَنْتُمْ تُتْلَى عَلَيْكُمْ آيَاتُ اللَّهِ وَفِيكُمْ رَسُولُهُ وَمَنْ يَعْتَصِمْ بِاللَّهِ فَقَدْ هُدِيَ إِلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ. Then the Holy Quran says, وَكَيْفَ تَكْفُرُونَ وَأَنْتُمْ تُتْلَى عَلَيْكُمْ آيَاتُ اللَّهِ. O believers, how can you be misled? How can you fall prey to suspicions when you are witnessing a living phenomenon of revelations of God? And as such, any man with an iota of sanity can see that these are the words of God. There is a special piety and holiness about this. The quality of truth is so apparent from all that is revealed to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that it's impossible. The statement is so apparently it doesn't carry an argument, but the argument of truth is truth itself. Like Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu speaking of Hazrat sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, अगर खाही दलीली आशिक़श बाश Muhammad hast Burhan Muhammad, that if you want the proof of his beauty, to fall in love, the word beauty is missing, but to fall in love is mentioned. That means the proof of his beauty. So if you want a proof so that you could fall in love with him, Muhammad is his own proof, because beauty is the proof of beauty itself. This is exactly the style of this verse. It says, وَكَيْفَ تَكْفُرُونَ وَأَنْتُمْ تُتْلَى عَلَيْكُمْ آيَاتُ اللَّهِ وَفِيكُمْ رَسُولُهُ. Muhammad, who is a living personification of truth, a living personification of light, he is among you. Youth go back to the unknown, obscure history by listening to the stupid, meaningless talk of the enemies of Islam and begin to suspect the sun which is before your eyes. So why do you revert to dreams? This is a very powerful argument, because in this argument the central position is occupied by Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself. So a man whom you have known as a true person, as Amin. So this is Muqam Ibrahim, in fact. All your life, whom you know now living before you as a personification of truth. You hear things about him and you begin to entertain suspicions and doubts. This is an argument which I have repeatedly used with the grace of Allah, sometimes very effectively, to defend Ahmadiyyat against the allegations which are now being spread about, false allegations about Ahmadiyyat in the form of filthy pamphlets. When some non-Ahmadi scholars come to me, I tell them, look here, there are just two choices for you. Either to believe your ears and reject the verdict of your eyes, or to follow your eyes and in comparison to the eyes' verdict, reject the verdict of your ears. I said the wisest thing, which has been said by some others, among the wisest things is this, that لَيْسَ الْخَبَرُ كَالْمُعَايَنَةِ. The hearing cannot compete with what you see. You may have been hearing different things, but the moment you see something to be different, then the ears are given a lie, never the eyes. This is also not exactly this, but in one of the Chinese sayings, a thing like this is said, that once you see a thing, then what you have been hearing is all false. So this is the essence of this statement of the Holy Quran, that you are stupid people. I have been telling them, look at Ahmadis. Look at their way of life. Do you find them non-Muslims? Can you ever discover a single Ahmadi who considers Hazrat Masih Maud equal to the status equal in status to Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? It's impossible, unthinkable for an Ahmadi, child, young man, old man, woman, male, female, whatever nature of an Ahmadi be, whatever nature an Ahmadi is, he knows it is deeply rooted in him that whatever Hazrat Masih Maud gained, he gained from his holy master, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. This is the claim known to every Ahmadi, and there is no exception to this. And still, some Ahmadis, ignorant Ahmadis, sometimes come with that pamphlet and say, look here, they have written this statement of Masih Maud. How can we answer them? I say, you are the answer. Why do you have to seek answer elsewhere? It is in your heart. You have been brought up as an Ahmadi. You have been bred as an Ahmadi. Even if you have become converted to Ahmadiyyat, all through your experience in Ahmadiyyat, you know this is the faith and there is no other faith which we are told to hold dear. So this is the meaning of this verse. وَكَيْفَ تَكْفُرُونَ وَأَنْتُمْ تُتْلَى عَلَيْكُمْ آيَاتُ اللَّهِ. How could you even remotely imagine, believe that what these opponents of Islam tell you has an iota of truth? Because in contrast to that, what you hear, you are seeing things. You are seeing the beauty of truth being revealed to you daily before your eyes. And most of all, you have seen the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. After that, there is no question of entertaining any doubts about him. وَمَنْ يَعْتَصِمْ بِاللَّهِ فَقَدْ هُدِيَ إِلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ. Yatasim billah here speaks of that statement which has been made elsewhere in the Holy Quran. وَاتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا. Hold fast to the rope of Allah. So, rope of Allah is in reality Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So in context with, in relation to him, speaking of him, وَفِيكُمْ رَسُولُهُ, suddenly the Holy Quran reminds us, وَمَنْ يَعْتَصِمْ بِاللَّهِ, holding fast to Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is tantamount to holding fast to God. Because God is not something tangible like you hold fast to, but the practices of a real being, of a person who lived a real life, somebody who was a fact of history like yourself. If you hold fast to him and his behavior and conduct because he is a godly person, so it would be tantamount to holding fast to God. فَقَدْ هُدِيَ إِلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ. He is the one who would always remain on the right path as against the evil which has been mentioned before. So to rectify this evil tendency among the ulama of today, the best thing is to call them back to the behavior and conduct of Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Last night I was reading some mail, and an ordinary Ahmadi girl had written to me about the false allegations and filth which was being broadcast against Ahmadiyyat in Pakistan day in and day out. And she's a small girl of school-going age, and she raises this question after this, after expressing her misery at what they were doing. Why don't they turn to the conduct of Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Why don't they judge their behavior on the touchstone of Rasul Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam's behavior? Can they believe for a moment that Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would have taken similar attitude against his opponents? So this is the message which is contained in the Holy Quran, which is a truth which comes out in the whole in human nature, because the Holy Quran is related to human nature. So it speaks of Sirat al-Mustaqim as against that crooked tendency of seeing bad things in whatever you observe. If you follow Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam because he was qayyim, you will always remain mustaqim. Next time, inshallah. We have finished the ruku. That is what I wanted to do today.